Actors, like most people, work for a while, retire, and then eventually die. It makes me really sad when one of my favorite actors stops appearing in films, as it reminds me that all of this is temporary and eventually will come to an end. One day I'll have to hang up my movie guy hat in favor of a banana hammock and a Florida spray tan. But today I thought it would be cool to celebrate some of my favorite actors that are no longer in the movies by checking out their final films and seeing if they went out on top. Spoiler alert, they didn't. If you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button, as it does really help me out. We're going to be looking at 3 actors today, and if this video does well enough and people are interested, I will do a part 2 with another 3 actors. Comment below what retired or dead actor you'd like to see me take a look at next, and whatever comments have the most likes, I will consider for part 2. And let's get into the video. The 2025 passing of Gene Hackman was what initially inspired me to make this video. I was and still am a big fan of this actor. I loved his work in films like The Conversation, Unforgiven, Get Shorty, and even The Royal Tenenbaums, and also anything else I've ever seen him in. He's usually great. I'm not as keen on his Lex Luthor, but other than that, I think he's a pretty stellar actor. Gene Hackman lived to the ripe old age of 95 and only passed away last year, like I said, but he actually retired from acting in 2004. He did this due to health concerns. His final film role saw him star opposite comedian Ray Romano in a film called Welcome to Mooseport. This movie sits at a whopping 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. Normally I don't trust Rotten Tomatoes, but a 13% is very low. But as a YouTube film critic with 300 subscribers, it is my duty to watch even the worst films. Along with Gene Hackman and Ray Romano, this film has a pretty solid cast. I found myself recreating the Leo pointing meme several times while watching this film. Oh, there's Fred Savage from Princess Bride. Oh, it's June Squibb from Hubie Halloween. What a treat to see her. Oh, there's Ray Romano from Everybody Loves Raymond. That's one of my grandma's favorite shows. I went into this movie with an open mind. Let's see how I liked it.
I had dignity once. Does anybody remember that?
Welcome to Mooseport.
Welcome to Mooseport is not nearly as bad as I expected. I actually liked it so much that I picked it up on DVD at a local Goodwill, which I gotta say, I was pretty surprised to see it at a Goodwill. It almost felt like fate to find this movie right after I had seen it. I wouldn't say this is a good movie by any means, but I would say it's at least okay. The film follows a mayoral race in the small town of Mooseport between handyman Ray Romano and the former president of the United States, Gene Hackman. I am always a big fan of seeing fictional presidents in movies, and Hackman's character of Monroe Eagle something. He had a last name. It's Monroe Eagle.
Former President of the United States, Monroe Eagle.
But I didn't write that down. So Monroe Eagle, I think, is a pretty good fake president. Like I said, this movie has a pretty stacked cast on top of its 2 lead actors, including Rip Torn, Marcia Gay Harden, Maura Tierney from Liar Liar, Fred Savage, and June Squibb. A good cast, of course, doesn't equate to a good movie if you've ever seen something like Expendables or Expendables 2, but it's nice to see a selection of solid actors in a film like this. Ex-President Gene Hackman has moved to Mooseport after leaving the presidency. Ray Romano is a local handyman who works on Hackman's house. After meeting the former president, he goes home to tell his wife, played by Maura Tierney, that he is quote-unquote ready.
I think I'm finally ready.
You ready?
Yeah.
Ready
To get the new truck, a big one.
Dina, false alarm!
It turns out he was only ready to buy a new truck. How awkward. I've been there. I will say my biggest issue with this movie was the central romance between Ray Romano and his girlfriend, Maura Tierney. The two are in an argument throughout the film because she wants to get married and he is too daft to understand that. This leads her to accepting a date with the ex-president, Gene Hackman. That date is the whole reason Ray Romano decides to stay in the mayoral race. Basically, if she hadn't said yes to Gene Hackman's proposal of a date, then he would have dropped out and let Gene Hackman win. So their little beef over not having a conversation is the only reason that anything in this movie actually happens. When a setup for a plot is as flawed as the setup for this movie is, it's pretty hard to take anything in the movie seriously. And also, the comedy isn't great in this movie either. I definitely had a couple of light chuckles. I'll reenact them right here. Ray Romano actually makes a pretty good lead in this movie, and all of the cast gets like at least one decent moment. The whole point of this video is to talk about retired actors' final performances, so let's talk about Gene Hackman as the former president. He's actually really good in this movie and doesn't phone in his performance really at all, even though he totally could have in sort of a throwaway PG-13 comedy. His character isn't super interesting. He's kind of like the stereotypical early 2000s career politician character who really only cares about public image. At least this president didn't invade Iraq that we know of, or invade Iran. Political commentary. I'm sure you can see I'm taking this video very seriously as I'm talking about politics in it, and politics are very serious. All in all, although it isn't a great film by any means, Welcome to Mooseport is not a bad way for Gene Hackman to have finished his career. I know he retired due to health concerns, but I am glad that he made this final movie. Maybe it would have been better if he retired with something like The Royal Tenenbaums, but that movie ends with his character dying, and this movie ends with his character as a former president who is now, spoiler alert, the mayor of Mooseport. He continues to show his dedication to the craft of acting, even in this throwaway, silly comedy film about a mayor race. It's kind of cool that his last performance was as a president, and to that, Mr. Hackman, I salute you. Sean Connery is one of my favorite actors. Connery actually retired from acting 17 years before his passing after the release of the film. I really didn't want to watch this one. I've always heard of this movie. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. This movie is a famous disaster. I guess you'd say an infamous disaster of a film, and it sits at 17% on Rotten Tomatoes. Maybe, if we're lucky, this movie will be 4% better than Welcome to Mooseport. It wasn't.
And the game is on.
LXG, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I've been able to escape this film's clutches for 23 years, but today, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen has finally trapped me and made me watch it. Other than Connery, this film doesn't have the advantage of featuring any other actors that I know, so my Leo point will have to point another day. Anyways, I still went into this film with an open mind. It's possible I'll like it. It wasn't. First thing I noticed about this film is that it has zero subtlety, big 00 subtlety. Scene after scene, characters are explaining their backstory or another character's backstory or how they're feeling inside. For instance, we watch Mina Harker's teeth, turn into fangs, then bite a guy's neck. There's blood everywhere. She's hissing like a vampire. Then, right afterwards, she has to explain to the characters that she's a vampire and that her, I guess, husband, Jonathan Harker, from the Dracula book, was her husband, and he's a vampire. If you've seen any adaptation of Dracula, you didn't even have to read the book. If you've seen any adaptation of Dracula, you're going to know who Jonathan Harker is, and you're probably going to know who Mina Harker is, because I'm pretty sure she's in at least some of the adaptations. She's definitely in my favorite adaptation, which is Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I gotta say, that version of Mina Harker is my favorite version of Mina Harker. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a movie based on a graphic novel by Alan Moore about a team of famous public domain characters from literature. The characters include Alan Quatermain, kind of an Indiana Jones-like character played by Sean Connery, which is kind of cool because if you've seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, you know that Sean Connery plays the father of Indiana Jones. The other characters are Mina Harker, Dorian Gray, who, spoiler alert, is the secret bad guy, one of the secret bad guys. There's actually two. The other one is M, not M from James Bond, but kind of M from the British Secret Service, but the M actually stands for Moriarty, so Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes. Tom Sawyer, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Captain Nemo. In the year of 2003, this version of Nemo is the second best behind Finding Nemo. It's a great idea on its own for a story, but these characters are lifeless caricatures of their literary counterparts. And I'm not gonna lie and tell you I've read all these character stories. I'm not much of a reader. I'm more of a movie watcher sort of guy. But I can tell there had to be more to these characters than what's here on the screen, because otherwise they wouldn't be famous enough to have included in the original graphic novel of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. All the characters here are one-dimensional and flat. Like Flat Stanley. Flat Stanley! And speaking of flat, the color palette, or lack thereof, is one of the most dull things I've ever watched in my life. Half the time I thought I was watching a black and white movie before you saw this like bluish, grayish, beige color of the skin of people. I guess this was a stylistic choice to make the movie so gray and dark. It's essentially the first Avengers movie with a bunch of characters we don't care about and we can't even see. I've heard this film had a really troubled production, so I decided to go ahead and look into it a little bit. Sean Connery and director Stephen Norrington reportedly hated each other, with their disdain leading to screaming matches and Connery referring to the production as a nightmare and Stephen Norrington as insane. Norrington also reportedly disappeared during the post-production of this film, leaving Connery, of all people, to kind of step in as the film's pseudo-director in post. It's honorable of Connery to try to piece this movie together, but ultimately that attempt failed. This film really couldn't be salvaged. All that being said, Connery isn't really bad in this movie. I don't think any of the actors, for the most part, are bad in the movie. It's just not a good movie, so it's hard for them to be good or really shine through. Like I said, he's kind of playing an Indiana Jones-like character, which is cool, but he's kind of an older, retired Indiana Jones, which, if you've seen Dial of Destiny, you know that's a character archetype that should never be on film ever, and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen actually proved that 20 years before Dial of Destiny, and I wish Lucasfilm had watched this movie and gone, maybe let's not make him a depressed, old, retired man. It's a shame that he could have ended his career playing the characters Morpheus in the Matrix films and Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, but instead he opted to film The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Had he gone out with those films, I would have said he went out at pretty much the peak any actor could ever go out on, because those are some of the most beloved films of all time, especially, the first Matrix, and then all three of the Lord of the Rings films are still looked at as one of those top 5 trilogies of all time. But sadly, where it stands, Connery went out on a bit of a stinker. Jack Nicholson is my favorite actor of all time, so it's no surprise that I'm including him in this video. He's also my favorite impression to do. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth. You look like one of my ex-girlfriends. What about one of your future girlfriends? I thought about it. I'm keeping the sunglasses on in honor of Jack for this part of the video, because Jack Nicholson always wears sunglasses. I have a drawing of Jack Nicholson that I did. It's probably my best drawing. I have a lot of his DVDs, or a lot of his movies on DVD. Some of them I haven't even seen. But I am trying to get through every Jack Nicholson movie. That's kind of a goal of this year. This is a book nook sort of thing. It's Here's Johnny! Here's Johnny! I put it with my movies and not books. We do share the same first name, which is one of the coolest parts about being a Jack. In wanting to watch every Jack Nicholson film, it was only a matter of time before I saw the bucket list. Alright, you got me. Jack Nicholson's actual last film was a film called How Do You Know from 2010, directed by James L. Brooks, the same director who directed Nicholson to his Oscar win for the 1996 film As Good As It Gets. The film also stars Owen Wilson, Paul Rudd, and Reese Witherspoon, my new girlfriend Raina Riggs' favorite actor. I've never really had any interest in watching this movie before. On top of its 30% Rotten Tomatoes score, the poster just looks like one of those really generic sort of rom-com movies from, 2000 to 2012, you've seen posters that look a lot like this one. There's a chance it'll surprise me, but usually I prefer a really, really bad movie over like a 30% Rotten Tomatoes score kind of movie. But anyways, a bad movie with Jack Nicholson is still a movie with Jack Nicholson.
Don't tell me. George.
Are you gonna make me literally run from bad news?
You do not have the luxury of not...
Alright, well, watching that movie, I wouldn't call it a breeze. In fact, I would call it a pretty terrible movie. How Do You Know was one of the worst movies I've seen in a while. And that's pretty surprising considering I just watched The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was also pretty bad. The problems start with the movie's title. It's called How Do You Know, but there's no question mark in the title. It's just How Do You Know, like it's a statement, but actually it's a question. Firstly, I gotta say, Jack Nicholson is in about 10 minutes of this movie, and he plays a pretty forgettable character called Paul Rudd's Mean Dad. Not one of his most memorable roles, probably his least memorable role, but maybe it'll be remembered because of how forgettable it is. How about that? That's interesting. The movie is mostly about three characters, Reese Witherspoon, Paul Rudd, and Owen Wilson, each of which are boring and unlikable in their own regard. Reese Witherspoon is the star of this film, and she stars as a professional softball player who has recently been fired due to her old age of 30. And now it's time for her to learn what she wants to do. This is a potentially interesting setup for a character. Maybe she can learn a new skill or go back to college and become legally blonde. But no. All she ends up doing is going back and forth on which of two men she wants to marry. Come on, give the main character something outside of a relationship. It's so, I don't know, it's just dated, right? It's blah, it's dated. We've seen it. Within minutes, she almost immediately settles for the womanizing Owen Wilson, playing the character of baseball player who continues to have what he calls anonymous sex with random women even after Reese has moved into the apartment and the two have talked about marriage. Wilson's probably the funniest character of the bunch, but even the word funny is a tad generous. I don't think I even chuckled half as hard as I did in Welcome to Mooseport. Anyways, Reese Witherspoon keeps bumping into Paul Rudd, who's playing a character called businessman who is the son of a more successful businessman, Jack Nicholson, who is dealing with legal trouble at his company. He's awkward and a little rude at times, but also I guess he's down to earth and real. He wasn't down to earth at the beginning of the movie because he was rich, but then he becomes poor and then he becomes a good person, so the movie says. It turns out that Jack Nicholson, Paul Rudd's mean dad, was actually the culprit of the crimes that Paul Rudd is being accused of. He was doing illegal business dealings in the Middle East. Reminds me of a certain guy who's kind of like Gene Hackman from Welcome to Mooseport in that he's the president of the United States. Anyways, Jack Nicholson has thrown Paul Rudd under the bus to avoid jail time. I don't want to go to prison for life. I'm an old man, Paul Rudd. Paul's got a big decision to make. Will he go to jail or will he send his elderly father to prison for the rest of his life over some shady business dealings in the Middle East? We've all done it. Paul Rudd has decided to let Reese Witherspoon decide his father's fate. If she loves Owen Wilson, the cheating baseball douche, over him, then he has nothing to live for and will go to jail for his dad. But if she chooses Paul Rudd, he will send his elderly father to die in prison. Look, I know his dad's a jerk, but it still seems a little cruel to send your father to jail for life over something as trivial as disregarding American business regulations. It's a strange dilemma to put in a film that has no interest in tackling the severity of this decision. This video is supposed to be about famous actors and their final films, and watching this movie almost made me forget that. I kind of just want to drill into this movie a little bit more, but I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop here and just talk about Nicholson in this movie because he's barely in it. He's got maybe 10, 15 minutes of screen time. It's possible he's in it for 20, but that is a big stretch. His performance is just fine. He's not doing anything interesting. Even in some of the weaker movies I've seen with him, he's still great, but here he doesn't have enough to do to really make an impression. It was very disappointing for a Jack head like myself, and especially having the name Jack makes this even harder. Well, that was not an easy task, but it was certainly interesting to take a look at some of my favorite actors' final films. Again, let me know down below which actors I should include in the follow-up to this video, and be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, as it helps me out quite a bit. And if you want to get nuts,
Come on, let's get nuts.
why don't you hit that notification bell where you can stay up to date on everything that I do? My socials are in the description down below. I've got a Letterboxd, a TikTok, and Instagram where I post some short form content and film reviews. This has been Jack Roney, the movie guy, signing off. I've been able to escape this film's clutches for the 25 years I've been alive, although this movie did come out I'm not 25.
We don't like flat Stanley, he's too flat. We need Curvy Stanley. Where's Curvy Stanley? Stand up, Curvy Stanley. Oh, there he is, he's so pretty. Don't you want to just kiss Curvy Stanley?
Jack Roney is dead. You can call me Jack Nicholson. Do you want to come in here? Do you want to come in here? You can come in here. I don't think she wants to come in here. Back hurts like a motherfucker.